A very good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. Welcome to yet another brand new live stream from the Hindu Academy team. And my name is Nishit Kotak. And do let me know where you're tuning into this broadcast from, wherever you are around the world today. We meet every Saturday at 2 o'clock UK time. And the whole objective of this discussion is to go through general Q&A on anything to do with Hinduism. We do start off with a focus topic. Today's focus topic is going to be on the concept of God in Hinduism. I have my whole team here with me. We've got Chitaben and Vijay. Actually, we are missing Manish Bhai today in action. And for today, we are thrilled to explore the topic of concept of God in Hinduism. So Hinduism is a rich and diverse tradition that offers a wide array of perspectives into the divine, making it a unique and captivating subject for this discussion. So throughout this live stream discussion, our expert panelists will go through the multifaceted aspects of the concept of God in Hinduism, from the many number of deities and their attributes to the all-encompassing cosmic reality of Brahman. So we'll delve into the significance of personal deities or Ishta Devatas and how they provide a unique path to spiritual growth for each individual. And furthermore, we will also explore the essential role of devotion or bhakti and spirituality in understanding and connecting with the divine. So as we navigate these captivating concepts, we also aim to highlight the continued relevance of them in modern Hinduism, demonstrating how these ideas have evolved and adapted over time to remain central to contemporary Hindu thought and practice. So we encourage you to actively participate in today's discussion, and how you can do that is a couple of ways. One, you can please share this live stream broadcast with your friends and family so that they too can join us on the conversation here. And number two, contribute to this live stream by sharing your thoughts, your comments, your questions in the comments area of whichever live stream platform you're watching us on. You could be watching us on Twitter, YouTube, or Facebook, and you're most welcome. So we're going to get started with the topic by playing a video, which will be around the focus topic of today. And after the video, we'll open up for a short Q&A session and then focus on general questions on Hinduism after that. Enjoy.
I want to know what is the concept of God in Hinduism and what is the concept of God in other religions. Because I must know what is relevant and what is not relevant. And what is the way of worshipping God in our religion and what is the way of worshipping in their religion. We want to have some sort of idea which one, where we stand in this respect.
Yes, the concept of God. You see, the Abrahamic traditions, that means Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, are very much fixated on monotheism. It means the concept of God is a supreme personality who is kind of, if you like, in charge of his creation, who continues to kind of interact with his creation, and the term is God. Now, there is a slight variation within the Abrahamic tradition regarding how to kind of codify this God, but I won't go into the technicality. The important thing is, okay, they have decided there is a supreme personality governing the whole creation. And they are saying in order for us to resolve our own human condition, our own problems, our own issues, our afterlife issues, let us try and build friendship with this great personality. And there are two aspects. For example, in the Christian tradition and in the Muslim tradition, the idea was to fear God. So behave well, because you are frightened, he's going to punish you. In the Christian tradition, this has become evolved slightly in the recent times. They say not fear of God, but love of God. So the way they want to build relationship with God is either through fear or through love. There's a transition in place. There's a transition in place. So what's the idea behind is this? There are a lot of positive things in all human beings. Like, for example, we love to become empowered. We like to be compassionate. We like to be knowledgeable. So what we do is this. We say by becoming religious, you say, how do you practice religion? In order to practice religion, we say, let us try and reflect this attribute that God is God. He's compassionate, all knowledgeable, all powerful. So let us try and reflect His qualities in our life. So the way you worship this God, of course through prayers and devotions, showing that you love Him, or you fear Him, or you love Him, whatever, the idea is to build a relationship with this Supreme Personality to sort yourself out. And the way you do it, to show His qualities, reflect His qualities in your life. So be compassionate, be charitable. This is standard stuff in all the monotheist religions. So this is, if you like, the concept of God in the Abrahamic tradition and how to practice it. In the Indic tradition, there's a vast way, as I told you, it's a pluralistic tradition right from day one. Vast variation regarding even the concept of God. Do you know to what extent the variation is? In the Hindu tradition, you can approach the idea of the spirit as a supreme personality in a variety of different forms, not just one form, variety of forms, either with form or without form, like the Arya Samaj and the Brahma Samaj. God, but no form. Don't give Him shape, please. He's just all powerful. His knowledge, like that, His truth, they define Him. Similar to the Abrahamic tradition, the Brahmo Samaj and the Arya Samaj. And then in the same Hindu tradition, you can think of God like a supreme personality, not only with attributes, but with actual shape, form, sakar, sagun. And this idea of God is Vishnu or Shiva or Mother Goddess. The Hindus find this most endearing. Majority of Hindus will subscribe to that because they love Him. Because they have got shape and they can see Him. Ah, my Lord, you are here. Let me worship you. Let me offer flowers. Why not? Why not? So majority of Hindus like to think of God like a supreme personality with shape, not only just as a truth, which is very abstract and very kind of, philosophic. Human, like almost, He's going to come and play with me, my Lord. What's wrong with that? This is the Hindu approach. This marvel. In fact, let me crack a bit of humor. Somebody was challenging Miss Lakhani. God is infinite. He can never take on a form because He becomes finite. He cannot be finite. I said, I'm very naughty. I say, your God is infinite? Yes. Does He have infinite power? Yes. I said, does He have the power to become finite? Does He have a button? He presses the button, I become finite and play with you. Oh, my, He doesn't have that button. I say, your God is not infinite. He's missing one button. So I crack humor. Why not crack humor? This is the idea of, this is why the Indic tradition is not weak. When people say, you can't have God with form, I say, who are you to tell God what to do? He will do what He likes. He's got a button. He presses and comes and plays with us as avatar. We love this lovely God. So you can think of God like with a person, with a personality, with a form. You can think of God without form, like Arya Samaj. You see, this is the way. This is the way they relate. They don't want a personality. Fine. Then there's a third way. This is where the transition, if you like, the important aspect that I talk about. Not God in the heaven, but God in humanity, God in all the living things. This too is a concept of God in the Hindu tradition. So, Sagun Sakar Ishwar, like Vishnu, Shiva, whatever you love, Mother Goddess. God without form, like Satya, truth. This idea is also very central. And the third idea, which is very attractive to me, is not to see God in some outer space, but to see God sitting here now. Look, you chaps, you think you're ordinary? Neither are you ordinary, nor am I ordinary. We are all extraordinary. We are the spark of divine. And this is something, okay, I utter this word. It sounds so nice and colorful and poetic. But actually, I know it is so. This is the difference. You see, this idea of actually relating to your own being as a spirit and seeing the same spirit bubbling everywhere is, if you like, turning. You say, how do you practice? This is how you practice. You actually see your living God in front of you. When you see every great prophet like Vivekananda, you see, whenever he saw degradation of his people, poor people struggling to eat, not enough food in Calcutta, this great personality would cry like a baby. This is not a put on. It was not show. Genuine love of my living God suffering in front of my eyes. What can I do for Him? And that is, if you like, not artificial. It is not a put on. I see some of these kathakar doing put on, and I say, God, leave us alone. they do દશરથ રાજા રડવા માંડ્યા, અરે ભાઈ અમને રડાવો નહીં. They do this wallowing, sentimental, કથાકારો લોહી પી જાય. And I'm fed up with that. I tell my wife, look, this is putting it on. હમણાં તો હસતો તો ઓચિંતાનો રડવા માંડ્યો ભાઈ, જોરથી રડ્યા, ધ્રુસકી આંખમાં પાણી આવી જાય. મેં કીધું આ શું છે આ કરે? It's artificial. That upsets me. I rather that they are straightforward. But anyway, that's the name of the game. All these gimmicks happen in the name of religion. I hope I've given a very lengthy answer. Thank you, my friend.
Fantastic. So we have a very, very interesting video there by Jay, looking at the concept of God in Hinduism. So folks, today I have with me our team here, Sitaben and Vijay. Welcome to today's broadcast. Namaste to you all. So yes, concept of God in Hinduism. So let's get straight into it. So how does the introduction of the concept of God in Hinduism sort of differ from other religions, and what makes it uniquely suited for the modern world? So we have various different ways Hinduism you can relate to God. Debai covered some of them on the video. So Sitaben, let's recap again. What are the different ways in Hinduism we have a concept of God? And then how does it compare to mainstream religions? And how is it suited for the modern world?
Yeah, no, that's a massive topic. There's so much that we can discuss within this topic. So I think the main thing to start off with is Hinduism is pluralistic by nature. There are multiple different ways of thinking about God. I think that's something that's very special about Hinduism. It recognizes the different starting points of every individual. So it sort of caters for the needs of every individual, because if God is supposed to be ultimate and almighty, then surely there should be an infinite number of ways of thinking about and approaching God. It can't be just blinkered in one particular vision. And this is what Hinduism shows, is that if God is infinite, there must be an infinite number of ways to reach him or her or the concept itself. So broadly, they can be categorized into three groups. One is this idea of thinking of God without form and without quality, this sort of underpinning to this universe, which is the concept of Atman and Brahman. The second idea is thinking of God as a quality, like love or truth or compassion. That there's not necessarily any particular form to thinking of God in this particular way, but it's more like a human aspiration which is sort of exaggerated and extrapolated. And we say the way that I make spiritual progress is by showing love or compassion or being truthful throughout my life. That's the way that I choose to make spiritual progress. And then the third way, which is probably the most popular way for the vast majority of Hindus, is obviously thinking of God with form and with quality, sagun sakar. And Hinduism is known for its multitude of colorful gods and goddesses, deities, which is wonderful, because within this huge range of ways of thinking about God, you can choose again within that subsection. You can think of God as your mother, your father, you can think of God as your child, you can think of God as your sweetheart. You can pick and choose whichever form of God appeals to you and your temperament. So I think it's absolutely wonderful that we have such a variety of different approaches. And the metaphor which really sort of rings true and makes so much sense, because if you just explain this to somebody who doesn't know about Hinduism, they think, oh, what a scattered tradition, what a scattered way of thinking about God. But the beautiful way of reconciling all of these different approaches is using the beautiful example of Sri Ramakrishna, which he said, imagine that the ultimate infinite spirit is like ice and water. So the water doesn't have any particular form, but based on your particular preferences and needs, that spirit sort of freezes into the form or shape of your desire. Because if God is truly infinite, then surely he can become anything or anything that you want or desire. So he can take the form of whatever suits your personal temperament. So this is how we can sort of reconcile all of these very different ways of thinking about God through this beautiful example of ice and water. Vijay?
Yeah, not much more to add, but pretty well covered, Sita. All I can add is that, I think one thing we have to keep in mind is that whereas in the Abrahamic faith, religions are kind of God-centered, Hinduism is a bit like, human-centered, because There's one thing which always, when Jay used to give his lectures, one thing always really get me was resolution of the human condition. How do you go about that thing? That is on your own individual basis. So every individual decides what is the best way for him to progress spiritually. As Sita mentioned, there's three main ways. So anybody can choose what suits them best and try and resolve the condition. What am I? I mean, look at the deeper answers, deeper meaning to your life. So there are multitude of ways to find these very profound, fundamental answers of your own, who you truly are. And that's the beauty about Hinduism. It gives you these options which you can use to pursue in whatever way suits you best. So you're not being enforced from top bottom. It's from bottom up. You decide how you want to go, not the other way around. That's the uniqueness about Hinduism.
Wonderful. So we talked about the concept of pluralism. Can we expand on that a little bit further? Because sometimes we have a lot of people who may not be conversant or aware about Hinduism very much so, but they would say things like, you worship idols or you've got so many gods, and they would poke fun at Hinduism. But can we maybe just take a moment to again highlight what does pluralism mean, and how can we share that people can find their own individual pathways to spirituality? Sita Ben?
Yes, so this is the thing, we have to make sure that Hinduism is properly understood. And when you sort of say that Hinduism is idolatrous, that means you haven't really understood this whole concept of thinking of God with form, because we are not choosing a piece of, as Dad has said so many times, we are not choosing a piece of marble or a piece of rock or a photograph and saying, oh, piece of marble or picture, or we're not worshipping those things, the physical objects. We are worshipping this infinite divine spirit through the form of this particular image. And because it's such a huge, such a vast concept, it's very difficult for our minds to get a handle on it. And the way that we can get a handle on it is by giving it a shape and a form and a personality. And then you can look up to that image and say, oh, mother, oh, father, oh, God, whatever you want to call that particular God. And it helps you to build a relationship of love with this infinite spirit. Otherwise, it's a very tricky thing. It's a very difficult thing to do. And the thing is, we think, oh, maybe this is something that's unique to Hinduism. But actually, all religions, knowingly or unknowingly, use some kind of symbolism to help get their minds around this very infinite concept. We have all the symbols of the world religions. We've obviously got Om in Hinduism, we've got the cross, we've got all of these images of different religions are ways that human beings are using to get their minds around a very subtle concept. So it's nothing to be, to sort of put ourselves down about. It's actually something very positive, because we have found a way around this idea of how to get our minds around this very infinite concept. So it's something that shouldn't be looked down upon. It's actually something that should be respected across all world religions. Vijay?
Yeah, all I can add, Sita, is that, we have to be careful that pluralism is not polytheism, because polytheism is the idea that there's many gods who are sitting in a council somewhere. It's actually one supreme ultimate reality expressed in a multitude of ways to suit every human being's aspirations. I mean, even if you look at the simplest thing, an atom can be seen as a wave or a particle, depending on which field you are. So something as small as an atom can be seen in two major different ways. Why can't God, something as Sita mentioned, infinite, not be seen in multitude of ways? So I think we have to understand that there is no one door to go and see the supreme. I mean, even my house has got two doors and some windows to get in. There can't be just one way to the supreme light. There has to be a multitude of ways. So we have to accept that as one ultimate reality, but a multitude of ways to approach and get to him, or her, or concept, yeah, or principle.
So as I was preparing for this broadcast, I went to look a little further. What are the different approaches to the concept of God, or how people attain spirituality? And I saw some of the major ones. I'm just going to touch upon them again. So one was monotheism. So this is religions like Christianity, Islam, Judaism, where there is a belief in a single all-powerful God who created the universe and everything and governs all aspects of existence. And these kind of religions often have a sacred text or documents or doctrines that the followers adhere to. Hinduism, on the other hand, embraces a more diverse understanding of the divine, with multiple deities representing various aspects of a singular ultimate reality, what we call Brahman. Then we looked at polytheism. So some ancient religions, such as those practiced by the ancient Greeks, for example, Romans or Egyptians, they believed in the concept of multiple gods and goddesses who governed different aspects of nature, life, the cosmos. So whilst Hinduism also acknowledges numerous gods and goddesses, it is distinct because it emphasizes the interconnectedness of these deities through the concept of Brahman. Then we've got pantheism. And this is the perspective that posits that God and the universe are identical and that divinity is present in everything. So Hinduism does share some similarities with pantheism in the belief that the divine permeates the entire cosmos, but it also acknowledges the existence of personal deities and transcendental things like the aspect of Brahman. We also have non-theistic religions. So some spiritual traditions, for example, Buddhism, Jainism, they don't focus on a creator God as such, but they emphasize on things like ethical living, they emphasize on spiritual growth and the attainment of enlightenment. So whilst Hinduism does recognize the importance of ethics and spiritual development, it encompasses a wide range of beliefs around the divine, including, like we said, the various other things before. And then we've got animism, which is spiritual practices mostly indigenous around the world that involve a belief in spirits that inhabit natural elements like rivers, mountains, and animals. And Hinduism has certain elements of this in its very nature. As we said, the very first texts were dedicated to the world around us or nature. It was not on God as such. So in summary, I think that I hope that helps sort of break down what my research was on the various aspects of it. And I'm really intrigued to carry on this discussion. So the next question I've got. Okay, so in the concept of a modern world, Vijay Bhai, can you explain the significance of how the diverse representation of God in Hinduism and leads to a more inclusive and adaptable spiritual framework? So we've got various ways of connecting with God, and in today's modern world, how does it lead to a more inclusive approach?
Yeah, I think very, very, very good question, a very powerful question actually, because we have to accept that everybody has a different starting point in life, different experiences, different traditions, different geographical, locations. So everything actually molds us in how we see the divine. I mean, I'll give a simple example. Myself, I'm growing up in an urban area. So for me, I have a Nicole temple nearby. But if you're growing up in a forest or something, you're tribal, you will see spade, as you mentioned, like you will see a spade in the trees. There is no way for me to ever understand, because I did not grow up. I will never understand his understanding. It'd be always better than mine. So who am I telling that your beliefs are wrong, or you have been living in this forest and seeing spades everywhere? You are wrong, but I am right. You can't say that, because everybody is very different. And the experience you have, the what life experience you have, nobody can see those, because you can't even transplant them. Actually, transplant, I think, is a sin in my view, because you can't transplant that. So in effect, you have to accept that everybody's different. Everybody's different, then of course they will have their own ways to see God. I mean, Sita's already mentioned 3 of the ways, the idea of Sagun Sakar, and Nirgun Nirakar beliefs, or animistic. As a matter of fact, Nishit Bhai, that's why I really love the Vedas, the Vedic scripture in Hinduism. They don't deny anything. They say from the earliest beliefs of man, which you mentioned, personifying, forces of nature and watching them, all the way to the very powerful philosophical ideas of Atman Brahman. Everything is in the Vedas. It's almost like an encyclopedia of entire humanity in the Vedic scriptures. It shows everything that people believe in, because it accepts, the Vedas accept that everybody is different. Everybody achieves the supreme in his own particular way. And that's the beauty about Hinduism. Sita?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And there's a beautiful example which helps us to understand that, is that we are all sort of different points on the circumference of a circle. We all have a very unique individual spiritual journey. And obviously, because in Hinduism, we believe in the idea of reincarnation, we've had a very sort of, all of us have been on a very different trajectory from even our own family and our friends. We've all had a very unique trajectory. So the way that we will make spiritual progress will necessarily be different to even those within our own family, those within our own community. And that's not something that should be, you know, a source of conflict. It should be a source of recognizing how enriching and how beautiful it is that we have so many different approaches within the fold of Hinduism. And the important thing to also remember is that ultimately they are all going towards the same destination. So as you continue to make spiritual progress in your own particular unique path, you will automatically start feeling a greater affinity with those around you who are also making spiritual progress in their own unique particular ways. So you start feeling this affinity with the whole of humanity, because we are all ultimately going to the same center, the same destination in very different ways. The important thing also to remember is that pluralism does not mean relativism. Relativism means anything goes, you know, oh, here's a piece of rock. This is a new pathway I've found for making spiritual progress. It's not like that. What we are saying is that all of these pathways prescribed within Hinduism, for example, are tried and tested. Individuals throughout the history of humanity have actually tried the pathway of Bhakti Yoga or the path of Karma Yoga, and they have found to be, you know, proven to be successful. They have actually become enlightened as a result of following that pathway. So we are not saying anything goes. We are saying that these are tried and tested pathways, and possibly, who knows, you may come up with your own pathway and become enlightened yourself, and then you would have discovered a new way. But you have to go through that process yourself to see if it does lead to enlightenment or not.
Fabulous. What an interesting topic we have. I'm sure this topic can easily extend for another 1 or 2 weeks if we wish to. But let's crack on. Sitaban, here's something for you. So Jay was a physicist, and he understood science pretty well. And in science, one of the things that I came across was the world of quantum physics, where things suddenly don't appear to be as what we see on the surface. Now, in Hinduism, we always sort of say that everything is interconnected. When we look at quantum physics, for example, we see below the surface level, there's a different world out there. So my question to you is, how does the concept of Brahman as a supreme, all-encompassing reality resonate with the contemporary ideas of interconnectedness and unity?
That's a really beautiful question. There's such a, actually, you may be surprised to see that there is a tremendous synergy between the findings of quantum and actually this ancient Hindu concept of God. Because actually, when you look at the sort of the level of the particles, you find that actually particles start to behave differently in the presence of a conscious observer. And, you know, you might think, who is this conscious observer? You know, the physicist will then turn to the biologist and say, well, you know, you deal with life and consciousness. Who is this conscious observer who is changing the way that particles behave? And then the biologist will scratch their head and say, who is this conscious observer? What is consciousness? And there is no particular physiological part of the brain that produces consciousness. But then we also know that all living things have some level of consciousness. Even a single-celled organism has consciousness, but there is no part of its physiology which produces that consciousness. So where is this consciousness? It seems to be everywhere and nowhere at the same time. And incredibly, if we go back to Hindu philosophy, one of the ways, one of the qualities ascribed to this idea of Brahman is pati, which means consciousness. So the nature of Brahman is consciousness. So what it's linking back to is this idea that Brahman is the conscious observer. The Atman within us is the conscious observer. And there's this beautiful idea that actually we are not part of this prakriti, this universe that is sort of manifested. All we are is the conscious observer. So it's incredible how the synergy of consciousness actually merges so beautifully with ancient Hindu philosophy. There is so much that we could discuss on this topic. It's really fascinating. Vijay?
Beautifully covered, Sita. Just a little bit more to add. I think, again, one thing to keep in mind, as Sita mentioned that actually, the divisions we make across the idea of metaphysical, physical, those divisions are but very artificial, superficial. Ultimately, all the different aspirations we have, whether in the scientific discovery or via the metaphysical ideas of Atman, Brahman, they're actually all one. If you can see the beauty in connectedness, interconnectedness of all these things, then I think you'll understand what the true nature of the spirit is. So you have to keep in mind not to sometimes put things in buckets, saying, this is this bucket, you can never mix with this bucket. It doesn't work like that in Hinduism. Hinduism, the idea of everything interconnected, everything trying to aspire to reveal the divine, so to say, is a very unique idea.
Amazing. So my next question, Vijay, this one's for you. So can you share examples of how modern Hindu thinkers and practitioners are integrating traditional concepts of God with new ideas and technologies to create innovative spiritual practices in communities? A hint is like Hindu Academy.
No, what I can say is that, there's so many spiritual giants. If you read the biography of Swami Vivekananda, it's really, really amazing because he actually uses, idea of modern world thinking, modern ideas, the idea of, using science as by his time to try and work out what this divinity is. So I know in a way, because Hinduism is not kind of prescribed, it's more like a discovery or seeking the truth. It's very easy to use all these tools of science, or modern tools to try and work out. And that's why, I really love, as I mentioned before, when Jay says, Sanatana Dharma is actually the resolution of the human condition. What does it mean by that? It means that we are trying to find the deeper answers because all of us, we live a very materialistic life. We, as Jay says, eat, drink, burp, and go to work and do that. At some point you go, well, surely there's something more deeper in meaning to me. The fact that we can use a multitude of tools to find the deeper answers, that is the beauty about it. So I think in the modern world, I would say to any modern Hindu, is use all the tools you have, be it for science, biology, even the idea of the religious kind of studies, spiritual, whatever you may have tools to try and answer this fundamental question that you are more than the body, and what are those answers? Try and search those answers. Use any tools we have. We're happy to use any tools. So ultimately, it's a discovery of our true nature. Sita?
Yeah, I think it's really important to think that, actually your spiritual journey should not be something that's sort of imposed on you. It should not be like, forced down your throat. If you're not ready for it, you're not ready for it. And, up until that point, keep enjoying life, keep going on holidays, keep doing whatever you want. But then the inevitability of life will catch up with you at some point. There will be times where there are very difficult times that you'll go through. There'll be hardships. There'll be all sorts of problems that start cropping up. And then when you start sort of butting your head against trying to resolve one problem after the other, that is when your spiritual journey will begin. You'll think, you know what, I've had enough of all this. I keep chasing after a happiness which always eludes me. I need to find a more permanent solution to this. And that is when your spiritual journey will begin, because up until then, if somebody tries to wag their finger at you, you'll say, forget this. Why should I care about any of this? It has to come from within you. And we have to make sure that we feel, we are the spirit at the end of the day. We will find a solution which is right for our own particular spiritual journey. That sort of solution will come to you. The right teacher, the right guru will somehow appear in your life. It may be in the form of a book or social media, whatever it is. In a certain way, you will find the right way, the right pathway. It will come to you naturally, but it has to come naturally, and it can't be something that should be forced onto you.
Amazing. So I want to discuss something else, which is basically around the concept of us probably not being the only people or the only living beings in the universe. The universe is a vast and weird and wonderful place. And I'm sure at some point in time, maybe not our current time, but that's another concept time. But somewhere around the universe, there will be other beings, and they don't necessarily have to be human. They don't necessarily have to be even alive in the way we call it alive. I've been reading about something called artificial general intelligence, all these scary stories of how we're going to have a sentient AI within like 6 to 9 months or something like that. All that is fancy stories, doesn't connect with people. But can you imagine this, the time we are living in? We have the potential of an AI which is smarter than us, can think bigger things than us, has access to more data than we could ever have. And if it became self-aware, what are the concepts of God according to it? So from me, I think that Hinduism is not just a religion, it is a way of life. One of the central things in Hinduism, we have a concept called Dharma. So Vijay Bhai, if I ask you the question, could you please share with the viewers today, what is this concept of Dharma and how can it be applied to address the current challenges that we face in terms of technology, where I just mentioned one? How do we control that the AI doesn't wipe us off? It will see us as boring or not good. How can we use it in politics, economics, etc.? Could you share with the viewers?
Okay, I think there's 2 or 3 questions you should find that particular question you just put in. I think first question, the idea of very important question is the universe full of life? And if so, how does it look like? Look, it doesn't matter. I'll tell you why, because Hinduism is not human-centered. It is actually in a way universe-centered. That's why we believe that all life has got, all life is divine, not just human life. So the smallest bacteria to the human life. So of course, as in normal mundane terms, it's easier for me to use my 5 senses to aspire to a divine God. And qualities like in humans, we have qualities like compassion, mercy, which Sita mentioned. And of course, I'll extrapolate those to a God, saying super compassion, all compassion, all merciful. In the way I'm expanding, extrapolating my qualities. Yet we know Brahman is beyond qualities, beyond form, because ultimately other lives like trees, their concept of they don't have concept of compassion. At least I don't know. Maybe they do. I'm not sure. But they will say to me, God is a 10-kilometer tree, because you all extrapolate, right? So why not just say God is beyond qualities? Because ultimately God transcends the limitations of human. If it's beyond qualities and beyond form, God is a principle. If he's a principle, then it's applicable universe-wide, not only earth-wide or human-centered. It has to be universe-centered. So in a way, idea of Brahman is universe-centered. Our idea is to find the link, not only us, with some other beings in the universe, no matter what form they are, they will aspire to the same. I hope, that's the idea. That's one idea. Regarding the question of dharma, it's a very, very powerful concept. In Hinduism, dharma and karma are very, very powerful concepts. What dharma says actually, we should use our innate abilities that we have to live righteously and to contribute to society in the best we can. So innate abilities means some people have got natural talent to be a doctor, some have natural talent to be, engineers. Use that for the betterment of humanity, so that we have an order society, a well-established society, so people can progress spiritually. The only thing is sometimes we get so stuck in materialism, we don't want to see deeper. There's a very interesting lecture by Jay Lakhani in YouTube. If you ever, I can't remember the name, but if you work really hard in your field, you may think you're doing something material. Ultimately, you become so good at it, you start seeing something beyond that particular, you think you develop. You start saying, actually, there's something more special. The fact that I can see something so deep, I can build something so beautiful, there's something far more to me than just building things. There's something deeper. So even the idea of engineering or science, sometimes when you go so deep, you cross the material barrier and you say, look, actually, there's something far more than just something material I'm creating. So the idea is, even dharma can be used in a way to do your job or do your innate abilities in such a way, positive way, ultimately takes you towards seeing something more than just a material life. It's difficult to explain this, but I think Jay explains it better than I do. Asita.
I do remember Jay talking about how you can, have that one-pointed focus that he used to say, whether it's music, art, dance,
Yes.
anything that gives you one-pointed focus, he says, would lead you down to a path of spirituality.
Correct. Yeah. Sita.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, the whole point of all of these endeavors, as you have said, is to develop this one-pointed concentration. And in a way, like, when you sort of start off life as a child, your concentration, your understanding of the world is very hazy because you can barely concentrate on anything for 5 minutes. But as you grow and as you sort of learn through schooling and education, your concentration starts to sort of get channeled. You can spotlight your concentration onto what you are studying, and you get a clearer vision of what your environment is all about. So that's literally the point of our education system, is to sort of focus on that topic and really get a good understanding of it. I think the difference is that, through our schooling, we are taught the skill of concentrating on everything on the external world. We are taught to focus on a book or an apparatus or a piece of equipment or whatever. But what seems to have been missing in our whole education system is being able to focus our concentration inwards. And the real sort of litmus test is, if you sit down to try and meditate for just even 2 minutes or 5 minutes, your mind will just go all over the place. If you're trying to think of, something higher, your mind will digress and go into completely all sorts of different thought processes, because we haven't practiced it. We haven't practiced concentrating inwards. We are used to concentrating outwards because that's what our schooling and education has taught us, but it has not taught us how to concentrate inwards. And it's a much more difficult journey because we don't have any physical thing to hold on to. We don't have a book or an equipment to hold on to. It's far more difficult. But I think the more that you practice, it's like sort of flexing a muscle. The more that you practice, the better you will be at being able to concentrate inwards and make tremendous spiritual progress.
I am going to come back to this very shortly. So we will wrap up very soon. I want to ask one last question on this topic, summarize it, and then ask a few viewer questions, and then we can close for the day. So Hinduism offers 4 pathways, at least the ones that I know of, for people to suit them on their spiritual journey. So one is Karma Yogi, which is part of action, Bhakti Yoga, which is part of devotion. You got Jnana Yoga, which is the path of knowledge, and you got Raj Yoga, which is the path of meditation. Now, although these paths are distinct, but they do also overlap, and people do tread across multiple sort of pathways, depending on their needs and their inclination. But the question, Vijay, is this: can the practice of yoga and meditation within the Hindu tradition be considered a secular, universally acceptable or universally accessible means of connecting with the divine, transcending religious boundaries?
Yes. I mean, absolutely. I think the thing to keep in mind is that one thing I've never been comfortable, I'll tell you, Nishit, is the word secular, because secular always has meant in English kind of dictionary that is something that is non-religious and non-kind of non-theistic, not linked to God. See, again, Hinduism doesn't really fit with that word secular, because all endeavors to are spiritual in that sense. So it never fits this way. When people say secular India, what does secular India mean? If you say dharmic India, I would understand, right? Or dharmic concepts. But it's very difficult to understand. But having said that, yoga is very special, because yoga, in a way, Patanjali actually explains it very good in the Yoga Sutra. It's an experiment. And he also mentions that if you succeed in the experiment, you achieve the supreme goal of self-realization. If you don't succeed, at best, you become a disciplined person. So you cannot lose in a way. But the idea of the disciplines required are very strict, because Patanjali understood very deeply that the amount of distractions we have are immense, from attraction, to the other gender, from the idea of way you speak, the thought process. Because, to succeed in yoga, you have to align the 3 things together. You align your thought, speech, and action together. It has to be one. You can't say one thing and do something else. You can't think of one thing, but you say something else. Or you say something else, but you do something else. So this idea, the Patanjali has set really strict rules. Because only when these rules are followed, you really can make giant leaps of progress. Nevertheless, practicing of meditation is still good for you, because it calms you in this world, hectic world we live in, with stress and tension. It's still a good idea. But if you take it very seriously for idea of go deep and self-realize, then it gets much more stricter. But having said that, it's a secular endeavor in the sense that it doesn't ask you to believe in a God or follow a God. It asks you to go and search inwards to realize that you're actually more than the body. And that's the whole idea behind that. So in a way, Sankhya Darshan talks about Prakriti Purush. It's very philosophical and theoretical. And Patanjali puts it in an experiment on how to do this, how to separate the Prakriti and Purush and find out that you're actually the Purush. Sita?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I mean, thinking of anything as secular, it doesn't quite fit with the Indian or Hindu philosophy, that kind of mindset. Because ultimately, you know, we sometimes think that our religion is all about putting our faith in, you know, a God out there, you know, who we have to pray to and hope that, you know, he fulfills our wishes and all of that. But there is a whole other aspect of Hinduism, which is so much more, I think, relevant for the world today. And that is not necessarily to put all of our faith and hope in an invisible person in the sky, but to actually think that I have faith in myself. Forget about a God, forget about anybody else. I have faith in myself. And how can you call that, you know, something that we shouldn't all want to do, whether you're religious or non-religious, secular or non-secular? You have to have faith in yourself. How are you going to make any progress in anything in your life if you don't have faith in yourself? So calling, even if you're the most secular, the crassest materialist, you still have to have faith in yourself. So, you know, there is no sort of demarcation or boundary in that sense. If you have faith in yourself, according to Hindu philosophy, you are spiritual.
Fabulous. We must wrap this up, otherwise we'll run out of time. So folks, thank you so very much. You have been very, very helpful with your topic. With this topic today. You've been interacting on the live chats, both on YouTube and on Facebook. And I want to say thank you very much. Trushar Pai says he really misses Manish Pai. So do we. And so in conclusion, let me just extend our, on behalf of Hindu Academy, our heartfelt gratitude to you all, our viewers, for the valuable feedback and input into this fascinating discussion about the concept of God in Hinduism. So as we reflect on the relevance of these concepts in the modern world, we encourage you to continue exploring and engaging with these ideas in your own lives. Your curiosity and enthusiasm for learning are vital to the growth and evolution of our spiritual community. So we hope you'll join us again next week at 2 o'clock on Saturday for another thought-provoking and engaging topic. Be sure to tune in at 2 p.m. UK time, and we will dive deeper into the world of Hinduism and its many facets. So now we're going to go into viewer questions. Let me just ask a few that were here. Keris Jubilee is asking, would it be appropriate to call Bhakti Yoga non-secular, even though you may have a personal secular belief?
Sita?
Yeah, so I mean, as we were saying, this idea of creating a boundary between secular and not secular, I mean, it doesn't sort of fit, I think, with the way that Hinduism is all about, because everything is divine, everything is spiritual, whether we know it or not. So, I mean, for example, with this idea of Bhakti Yoga, this idea of showing love and devotion to a God, that's a wonderful thing. It's a beautiful thing, and it served a purpose for so many hundreds and thousands of individuals throughout history, building a relationship of love with that form of God. But we have to remember it's not even just restricted to that particular form of God. It could be love for humanity. You love your family, your friends. That is also spiritual. We shouldn't think of that as necessarily being, oh, this fits in the box of secular and this fits in the box of spiritual. According to Hindu philosophy, everything is divine, everything is spiritual. So I think that's a really beautiful thing, that you can love a God or you can love humanity around you. Vijay?
No, Sita comprehensively covered. Nothing to add really. Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
Okay, so Vijay, then this one's for you. Satish Krishnan has asked 2 questions. The first one is that other Abrahamic religions are at least promising a heaven. What do I get by following Sanatan Dharma?
So sorry you won't get to heaven. I'm sorry to say that, because heaven requires you to take your body with you and enjoy the pleasures of materialism. But what you will get is something far more powerful than that. You'll get the bliss you'll get when you achieve moksha is infinite. It's 1,000,000 times better than the best cake you've ever eaten in your life. You don't need a body for that. You'll be all-knowing. You'll transcend the bondage of space and time. You'll not be bound by those. what more great gift can you have? Because currently, if I go to heaven, I'll still be bound by space and time. I can only eat cake for, how many, 10 days? If I eat cake for 1,000,000 years, what will that be like? So in effect, you get a prize which is far superior to that idea of heaven. You get the power of all knowing and the supreme bliss of that idea of knowing your true nature, which is one with the universe. Sita, that's what I can add to that.
There's nothing much more I can add to that. I mean, I think, obviously we believe in reincarnation, and we pick up from where we left off from our previous journey. So we keep carrying on in that cycle. And, we sometimes fall into the trap of thinking, I'll leave my spiritual progress to the next life and to the next life. And you keep kicking the can down the road. But ultimately, when you realize that actually life is hard, life is jagged, that is when you think, you know what, I don't want to keep coming back and going through the same old stuff again. I want to get freedom. And literally, that's what we are searching for through this path of, within Hinduism. It's all about searching for freedom, because we are all bound by so many laws and rules of the universe. We have to eat and breathe and drink and do all of these things, the most basic things. We are bound. And if we don't follow the laws of nature, we will die. That's how bound we are. We are like slaves, and we want to break free from that. Why should I be a slave? I want to be a master. And that's ultimately what moksha is all about.
You have just answered Satish's second question without me asking. The question was, what's the point of attaining moksha if I don't remember anything from my previous life? So you've just answered the point of attaining moksha. Siddharth Bandari has a question, is asking, what should a man prioritize between following his path of karma according to his dharma and leaving the materialistic world behind to find God in himself or in whichever form he or she perceives?
Yeah. Oh, you're on mute.
You're muted.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is this, the question is, if you actually serve, if you're the path of karma selflessly, you don't have to look inward, it just happen automatically. Because once you see the divine in others, you see the divine in yourself automatically. You see the interconnectedness, everything. So you don't have to look specifically in a separate way to inside. It just happened. I think one thing to keep in mind of materialistic world, people think that we are saying that you should go and wear just 2 pieces of clothes, run away in a forest and live in some sort of a hut. No. What it means that you still, of course, live in the world with whatever tools you need. The thing is not to get bound by them. That's the important to remember, because we all use tools to get on with the maintain daily lives. The thing is not to kind of run away. That's not the idea. You should live in this world at the same time be spiritual. So all I would say is that if you follow your karma, selfless action, path of karma, and use your dharma to help in that path, I'm pretty sure at some point you look inwards automatically without even you knowing, and see the God in yourself, and it kind of help you in that progress. Sita?
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, the example that we have within Hinduism is we have to live like a lotus flower. Even though the lotus flower grows in the muddy water, it's still pure and beautiful. So in the same way, we should live in this muddy materialistic world, but make sure that we stay pure and beautiful.
Amazing. So we had some viewer feedback, like Ali. Ali says, God for me is the forces which underpin reality, the science that runs through creation, existence, and destruction. She says she looks more towards the qualities of the deities, like, for example, Ganesh represents being calm, headstrong, determined, knowledgeable, etc., doing the right thing. And so that's what she focuses on, the qualities to aspire to. Thank you for sharing that, Ali. And we've got another question from Trushar Patel. Are there any non-Vedic ancient gods or goddesses like Zeus, Ishtar, Ra, or the monotheistic Abrahamic like Allah, etc., or any other contemporary gods who are mentioned in Hindu scriptures, shastras, or any stories like that?
So I think there's a lot of synergy across the world in that sense. Even in ancient times, there's a lot of exchanges. So I'm pretty certain that there have been some sort of links across the world where gods was like when gods are personified, personified. It's not unique to India in that sense, unique across the world. So it's quite likely that these ideas have been shared or passed across through many generations and shared, and kind of idea of divine beings, divine kind of gods and goddesses will have similar attributes. So I'm not surprised in that sense. And there's nothing wrong with it. As Hinduism is quite okay to aspire to God in that way as well. Sita?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there is any sort of connection, but I think it's beautiful that the whole of humanity has a very similar way of thinking, a similar way of linking to this idea of spirit. You know, we have all these, you know, forces of nature which are personified. We've got God of this, God of that, and that all makes religion and spirituality colourful. And I think it's beautiful when you're able to see the synergy and the similarity of the human condition.
Superb. Siddharth Bandari is asking, is it wrong to be ambitious about my work, like becoming the best at a certain thing, whilst following vairagya, which is, I suppose, being like a dispassionate about your work? I sort of find it hard to see how you'd become the best at something without being passionate about it. Vijay bhai?
Oh,
You're muted.
Vairagya means detachment doesn't mean that you don't pursue a field. You still pursue a field. I think the idea is that when you say attachment, we mean bond in such a way that you feel that it kind of affects your spirituality. I mean, it's good to build the best things, but doing the kind of a spiritual divine way, you know, it'll come automatically. The key thing is that if you get bound by something, then you cannot discriminate what is ultimate real, not real. That's the key idea. So I think we have to realize when you say passionate, in what sense? That's the idea. If it's passionate and makes you highly charged, highly focused, highly elevated in your understanding, you feel more positive, then it's a good thing, right? If you're going to be bound as a material thing, which kind of stops you, say, progressing in terms of positivity or seeing divine, then it's a different thing. Sita? Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. It reminds me very much of what Swami Vivekananda says. Anything that makes you feel empowered about yourself, think of that as making spiritual progress. Anything that makes you feel weak, see it as not making spiritual progress. So doing well in your career, doing well in your job, if it makes you feel empowered, that's probably a good thing, a positive thing. You're making spiritual progress without even realizing it, without the tops and tails of thinking about God. If it's something that pulls you down and drags you down, makes you feel bad about yourself, then maybe that's not making spiritual progress.
Fabulous. Folks, it's now top of the hour. We must throw this to a close. Thank you again so very much for joining us every week as you do. We do appreciate you taking the time out of your busy lives to join us. I'd like to thank our team here. We've got Sita Ben and Vijay Bhai on the broadcast with me today. Manish Bhai is missing in action, so we'll probably have him on the screen next week, hopefully. And today I'd like to end with a quote from Swami Vivekananda. And this quote is one of my most favorite ones of Swami Vivekananda, and it's, "Arise, awake, and do not stop until the goal is reached." So we spoke a lot of things today. Now it is up to you to go and put some things into practice, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Remember to tune in to our YouTube channel. We do release regular new videos across the week. And with that, I'd like to say bye-bye for now. And we'll see you next week. Have a great week, everybody. Bye-bye.